Alright, on to the Spedix S250 ARF. We're almost ready to fly. This is going to be a little more complex. This kit, as you can see when we open it up, will come in complete disassembled product here. You're going to have a bag here. It's going to have your bottom and top plates, your landing gear, your Mobius mount, your arms, some screws and stickers. You're going to have your flight control board depending on which one you've picked. This one here is the KK2. There is your DSM-2 compatible satellite. You have 2 green ESCs, 2 red ESCs. You have 4 motors with pre-installed bullets on the end. We have standoffs. Here is the power distribution board I spoke of earlier. On the B&F kit, it's actually integrated in the bottom plate. On the ARF kit, it's actually a completely separate board. You have your Velcro, your assembly instructions. Set that off to the side here. And then the last thing in the box is going to be your props. Alright, so let's go ahead and pull everything out of the package. Take a look at what we've got, line them up on the bench so we can assemble this. All right, a lot to look at here. So first we have our ESCs. We're going to go through real quick, give a quick description. You have your power and your ground wires. Your 3 short wires go to your motors. And then your orange and brown wires, your signal wire, which goes to your flight controller. We'll set all these off to the side for assembly in a minute. Your DSM-2 compatible satellite with plug. We have the white shocks for your Mobius or action camera mount. We have your 4 legs with a package of 2 screws per leg, which should be 8 screws. Now these here are Sunny Sky X2204S 2300 kV motors. 2 of them should be clockwise, 2 of them will be counterclockwise, and when we assemble them, I'll show you which ones go in which positions. Your Spedix stickers for your arms. And we have 4 of these arms here. Now you'll kind of notice and you'll look at them and you'll think they're pretty flexible, and in a way that's great. But with the support of these carbon fiber looking plates here, it actually structurally completes the arm and makes it pretty solid. So we'll put these off to the side. Your FPV front facing camera mount, the KK2 flight control board, and we'll get into this in a little more detail here in a few minutes. Some of the kits come with a battery Velcro strap. Your top and bottom carbon fiber looking upper and lower plates. And your power distribution board, and we'll also get into this in a little bit. You have 1 plug here that's pre-soldered on the board. That's going to be a 5-volt power source for your flight control board. You also have, just like you had in the B&F kit, an extra wire here, and this will plug into the board either on the 12 volts or the battery source to give you an extra power source for your FPV gear. Alright, let's go ahead and start assembling the kit, get this thing rolling. First we're going to start by mounting the motors to our arms, installing our ESCs and our bottom plates. Now at this point it's irrelevant what motor goes where because we'll place these motors in the right spots at a later time. So for now you can just bolt these things down to the top of your arms. Stick your wire through the hole right here. And then we're going to use the supplied screws here in the kit, which are the ones that we had in each motor bag. And it does not hurt to put a little bit of Loctite on these motors, these motor screws. Alright, there we have the motors mounted to the top of our arms. Now some people might be asking what type of Loctite I was using. It's not something that I think is going to be absolutely necessary. I'm an old helicopter guy, so it just, everything I've always put on, I put on with blue Loctite. This one here is Loctite Thread Locker Blue 242. Do not use red, do not use green. Blue is what you want. And like I said, I don't think it's something that's absolutely necessary, but it's a good safety precaution. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to install the ESCs down into the arms. Now at this point, we do want to check and make sure that we had, before we pulled these out of the package, we knew which one was red, which one was green. There's our red, there's our green. And what we're going to do is we're going to install a red LED ESC on a CCW and a CW. And on the motor you can actually see it. We'll see if we can zoom in here so you can get a better look. You'll actually see right here at the end of the name, you'll see a CW there at the end. So you want a red LED on each of the CW and a green LED on each of the CCW and CW. So realistically in the front you're going to have a CW clockwise motor, and you'll also have a counterclockwise motor in the front. You want a green on each one of those. So this is a green LED going on a CW. And you will notice this right here needs to go down. The wires should be on the top where they plug in. We're going to actually push those down inside, so you should see the chips. Okay, now at this point we're going to go ahead and plug each one of these 3 wires in here to the 3 wires here. Okay, So you have your motor, 3 wires coming off. For now, we're going to go ahead and plug it into the 3 wires on the ESC. We're going to kind of pull them down into the arm here. And then we're going to come double back with the ESC. Make sure we clear the wires, don't pinch them. And we're just going to kind of slide them in. Just like that. So you have a nice clean, and your wires are hidden. Now do each one of these. That was a green on a CW, so now we'll take the other green and go to a CCW, which is a counterclockwise. CW, CCW, same thing. And if you're wondering which side of the ESC should be facing up, it should be that part. You should see 3 chips down below, 1 big one up above, and the LED is actually that white diode there in the center. That should be facing toward you. Now we have 2 red ESCs left. We have a CCW and a CW. So we'll go ahead and install those. Okay, the motors have been installed, the ESCs have been installed. We've separated out our green from our red. And one thing I like to do here to help keep them separated is I take my green ones here. The top 2 are my green ones. And I'll go ahead and throw my Spedix sticker on them. So clockwise, counterclockwise. So your Spedix faces forward. And what this does is it helps me remember which ones have my green LEDs on them. Now if this was the front of the quad, I put my clockwise over here, my counterclockwise over here, and then I throw my stickers on them so the Spedix is facing forward. Now later on, when we get into the process, we'll know which ones are red, the 2 without stickers, and which ones are green, the 2 with stickers. So now you don't have to keep them separate any longer. Now, we're not going to throw in the bottom carbon fiber looking plate yet because we need to run these things up in order to find out if they're spinning in the correct direction. And we'll probably get into that, and I'll show you a trick for that after we get the bottom plate put on it. Alright, so onto the bottom plate. We're going to pull the bottom plate here, and it doesn't matter which way is forward. We're going to set it on the table so that that is the forward direction, so we have an idea of what we've got and where we need to be. So we're going to place our green in the front. So these 2 green ones will be up here in the front at some point, and we'll place our red at the back. Now we've got to decide which motor goes in which spot, which counterclockwise goes where, and which clockwise goes where. Alright, in this configuration, if this is the front, your clockwise motor is going to be over here. Your counterclockwise motor is going to be over here, and then it's going to be opposite. So counterclockwise and clockwise. And you can find that out by looking at the motor. CCW means counterclockwise, and it's right here at the end of the number. So that's a counterclockwise green, goes in the front left. Clockwise green goes in the front right. And this is a red. So counterclockwise right, and clockwise left. Once again, clockwise, clockwise, counterclockwise, counterclockwise. Our green ones are in the front. We can identify those because we have the stickers on them. Red ones in the back, they have no sticker. Now we're going to pull these out, kind of separate them a little bit. We're going to slide this underneath so we don't lose our spot. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to make sure that this area in here is not going to get pinched by the plate. I'm going to slide that over, and we're going to pull our screws out. Okay, first arm is on. We're going to continue on and do it with all 4 motors. Okay, we have the arms attached to the bottom plate. Let's go ahead and move on to the power distribution board. Okay, power distribution board that comes in the box here. If you actually take a look here, we have 6 outputs for 6 ESCs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you'll see outside each one the polarity plus and minus of each one. On this board you also have a 5-volt output. This is for your flight control board. And then these pins through here are also outputs. This side here is the battery, minus and plus. And then over here is your 12-volt output. Now your 12-volt output you're going to use for usually your FPV gear, since the tolerance there is between 5 and 15 volts. If you try to put your FPV gear over here on the battery side and then you start running a 4S battery, then this will transfer whatever power your input is. If you're running a 4S battery, then it'll transfer all of that amount of energy through these pins here. So FPV gear over here, this is your battery output. Now you can see when I lift it on end here, these are your bullets, so you can plug your ESCs right into the board. So what we're going to do now is we're going to attach the standoffs that come in the kit to the board and then put the board on the quad. Alright, as you can see, I actually put the screw on the top on the Spedix part here with the standoff underneath. And for the reason of this is when you go to attach the flight control board to the top, it'll actually hit. So now we're going to move and put this onto the quad. ESCs facing either forward or backwards. Okay, next up we're going to plug the ESCs into the power distribution board. All right, ESCs plugged into the power distribution board. Everything's nice and neat. Now we're going to take your 5-volt wire here, we're going to kind of tuck it away so it's not a mess outside the board. Okay, before we get started here with mounting the flight control board to the Spedix, I want to give you a quick rundown on each board so that give you an idea of which wires to hook up in which spot on your control board. Now this is the KK2 board. I've gone on RC groups. We've downloaded just a generic layout of the board so you have an idea of what you're looking at. I don't know whose picture this is, I just know it came off of RC groups. So on your KK2 board, here, let's see if I can orient this a little bit. You're going to find on the right side of the board over here, you're going to find your M1, M2, clear down to M8. These are your servo output wires to the ESCs. So on the board, you're going to start here with motor 1, motor 2, motor 3, and motor 4 with this quad here. On the left-hand side, we are currently not using the aileron, elevator, throttle, rudder, auxiliary because we're using a DSM-2 compatible satellite. And on this particular board, it plugs in to the side of the board here, which would be, if you're looking at the top, over on this side here. Now your input from your power distribution board that we have here, this is the one we tucked up inside the 5-volt lead. That can actually plug in just about anywhere on these pins here or on these pins over here. It'll bridge between the two. Just as long as you have it correctly on the board. It's the black on the outside, the red in the middle, and then your signal wires over here on the left-hand side. On the opposite side, it's going to be the exact opposite. Your negative is going to be on the outside, on the left, your power in the center, and your signal to the inside. So your black wire is always going to be on the outside of the board. For the KK2, that's pretty much about it. Let's move over here to the CC3D board. And on the CC3D board, I actually pulled this from the Open Pilot's website. And our board is a little bit different than the one in this layout. If you actually look in the layout here with the arrow up, you see the pins over here on the right hand side. What Spedix has done is created their own board, and it actually rotates it this way so that the pins are on the back side. Now what this does is a couple things. For one, it gets your USB port, which is normally on the back side of the Open Pilot board, which is hard to get to when it's installed in the multi-rotor. They've turned it so that it's now on the left side of the board. Up here you'll see the arrow. Now on the left side of the board, here's your USB, so you can plug it in from the side. And that also puts the ESC wires coming out the back here. So this goes to ESC or motor number 1, motor number 2, motor number 3, and motor number 4. And then just like the KK2 board, we have the 5-volt lead coming out of the side of the power distribution board. That's going to plug into any one of these back pins here. So if I have motor 1, 2, 3, and 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, I can actually plug that 5-volt lead in here to number 5, with the negative wire being to the outside of the board again. and that will power your flight control board. Now in some cases, if you want to save a little bit of wire, we can actually pull the pins out of this plug and we can plug them into one of these 4 motor wires, which will eliminate the 5th wire being plugged in. So now that we have an idea of each of the flight control boards and where things plug in, one thing I forgot here, on the CC3D on the very front of the board is where your satellite plugs in up here, and that's actually up here in the front, right next to the receiver. Alright, so now we know where each wire plugs into the flight control board. We're going to go ahead and install one of the flight control boards on this quad. Today we're actually going to be using the KK2 board. We have our quad with our stickers facing forward. And we're going to find the arrow, which is up here in the upper right. And we're going to install this with some 2-sided tape onto the flight control board, onto the top of the power distribution board. Okay, flight control board's connected to the top. Now we need to go ahead and plug in our power wire. This is our 5-volt power wire here off to the side of the board. And we're just going to plug it into motor number 5 with the ground on the outside. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Alright, so now that'll supply power to our flight control board. The next thing we need to do is plug in each signal wire for each motor and ESC. Now for the open pilot stuff, see what we got here, and the CC3D and the KK2 both are identical. As you can see here, as it sits, this is the open pilot, and this was actually pulled from Open Pilot's website, which makes this motor number 1, which makes this motor number 1, this here motor number 2, motor number 3, motor number 4. And as with that, the KK2 board, now this image was pulled from RC groups, same exact thing, same direction. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right, so with that said, motor number 1, we're going to plug in here to the number 1 spot. Motor number 2, plug into the number 2 spot. Motor number 3, we're going to plug into number 3 slot. And motor number 4, number 4 spot. Alright, this is where some of your zip ties come in handy. You can actually tuck some of these wires up under the board to make it a little nice and neat. Okay, almost done. Getting down to the quick stuff here. We have a battery strap. We're going to flip this thing over, and you can actually loosen the board just a touch here. And then what we can do is we can actually slide this under the power distribution board. And the power distribution board will hold everything in place. Okay, while we have it down here, let's go ahead and throw our legs on. All right, legs are on. Let's go ahead and flip it back over. Now what we can do here, we can go ahead and take our sport camera mounting plate. We're going to grab our top plate, and while it's off, makes it a little easier, we're going to go ahead and install our sport camera mounting plate. Okay, all mounted. We can screw this to the top here. Spedix logo forward. And we'll screw the top plate down. All right, the last two things we're going to do here is we are going to put the FPV camera mount in the front. Okay, a couple last things to do here before we wrap up. We went ahead and put the last two remaining stickers here on the arms. We have the DSM-2 compatible satellite we need to install, so we'll go ahead and flip that over. I like to put mine down here on the bottom. Some people put theirs right in the back here, and that's where we'll go ahead and put ours. On the inside, that way we don't knock it around with the battery. And then we'll take our wire, we're going to shove it up underneath the flight control board. Find something to help us out here. And we'll tuck it up in there nice and neat so we don't have any issues with it. And then we're going to plug this thing right into the side of the flight control board here where my thumb is. Alright, that pretty much wraps it up for the installation and assembly of your components to your Spedix S250 Quad. Now, if anybody hasn't noticed, we did not go through the process of installing our props yet. That's done for safety reasons. Here in the next couple videos, once you find out the appropriate one for the KK2 or CC3D, depending on which one you get, you'll go through the setup process, and we don't want these on here for that. Well, if you have any questions, feel free to email us at info@buddyrc.com. Thanks for watching the video, and good luck with the rest of your build.